Welcome, everyone. Welcome to a new series that I am launching. And this series is a very special series called Expert Interviews with Ken. This is a series where I basically interview other people who are experts in their own fields, whatever their profession is, and we get a chance to hear their story and what it is they're doing for people. So with that, let's dive into today's guest on Expert Interviews with Ken. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Expert Interviews with Ken. We've got yet another episode out here today, and today I've got special guest Teri Sieler. Now, she is an expert health coach. She's an expert health, wellness, and life coach dedicated to helping women navigate the overwhelming demands of life and break free from the cycle of burnout with a deep understanding of the physical, emotional, and mental toil that stress and exhaustion take on women. Teri specializes in both burnout prevention and recovery, empowering her clients to reclaim their energy, balance, and well being. Through her expert coaching, Teri provides personalized strategies to help women recognize the early signs of burnout and implement sustainable self care practices and restore a sense of fulfillment in their daily lives. Her approach is rooted in practical solutions, compassionate guidance, and commitment to long term transformation. I'm also going to say her approach is very much faith based as well. Teri's mission is to support women who feel stretched too thin, whether they're on the fast track to burnout or already in the midst of it, so they can regain control, find their lives again, and step into a healthier, more vibrant version of themselves. She's not just a coach. She is a catalyst for change, helping women to redefine success and well being on their own terms. Welcome, Teri. I am so excited to have you on today's show. So, here's what I want to do right now. I want to unpack all of that. How did you get there? How did you even get to be a burnout coach expert and all of that? So, let's unpack your story.
All right, absolutely. Before I get into my story, though, I just want to say to all you listeners that I understand that each of you have your own story. So even though my story involves burnout, I invite you to listen through the filter of your own experiences today and what God may be saying to you through that. A bit of background about me, which is, I guess, very much part of my story, is I came from a very musical family, and through the years, there were three things that were very, very important to me: family, music, and ministry. So I always knew that that my calling in life was going to involve all three of these things in one way or another. Of course, my first calling was motherhood and loved that so much. Um, but then after they grew up and got into the high school years, my youngest was almost there. He is just moving into them. I knew God was bringing me into a second calling, and that was teaching. Now, I had kind of volunteered at their schools for years, teaching music at their little grade schools, but never really got my degree. So I went back a little bit later in life and got my degree in teaching and set my sights at teaching at a private Christian school, academy, high school level, there in my own hometown. And had prayed for this job. My kids were my two older ones had almost graduated, and my youngest one was about to go in. And I just knew this was where I was going to teach. This was where God had me. And it did open up. And I was so thankful to God because it had been years where it had opened up, but then the door shut really tight. Opened back up, the door shut really tight. But somehow in my heart, I knew this is where God wanted me. So, to kind of set the stage for where I'm going from here, tell you what my responsibilities were there. I was their music teacher, so I did a general choir of about 50 or 60 kids. I had a small chorale that were about 18 to 25. I taught band, Bible class, study skills one semester, and English the other, and had some extracurriculars of drama and orchestra along with that. So it was a pretty heavy load just coming in. And besides that, as a music teacher, I also had two major programs a year with my large choir and small, and then a spring tour in the second half of the year to bring my small choir around to various churches. I'd have a big spring drama performance, and all of this had to be kind of sandwiched into that the duties that teachers have outside of the classroom. So that I review that with you because that sets the stage for where my life went from there and the turn that it took. First year, boy, I just felt like I was playing catch up, staying up, on things, overcoming. Their director that was there before me was this wonderful director, and so I had to kind of overcome a little bit of that devotion that the kids had to him to get them on board with me. But it was an intense first year. Second year began to settle in, and I thought I had this. So I did something that was really kind of what struck the nail in the coffin there as far as burnout goes. I went to my administration and I asked them because I would notice that all the other teachers were sponsors for a class and they'd go through this class for 4 years and be able to just be their sponsor on all the trips that we took and it was pretty involved, but I really didn't realize how much. And I asked them if I could be a sponsor. So for the next 4 years, I took on yet another responsibility. And and by the fifth year of my teaching, which was the my class that I had gone through with, it was their senior year. And so I had a lot more to do their senior year as a sponsor. That was the year that all hell broke loose. And I remember probably the first indication that something is really wrong would be that I would wake up at night with anxiety attacks and just have to pray my way through that. Oftentimes wouldn't go back to sleep. Oftentimes I couldn't go to sleep, but I began to notice things there that hadn't happened to me before. And so, sure enough, I began to think, wow, do you think it's possible that I have experienced burnout? Is burnout even real? I didn't even know if it was a real thing, really. I thought maybe it was just an imagination or some, word that they just slapped on to somebody who's especially exhausted in their job. But when I started doing my research, there was no doubt that I had experienced burnout. And and it caught me off guard. It blindsided me because now it was too late. And now I was experiencing everything that comes with burnout. You have a loss of motivation. You are extremely, extremely exhausted. New responsibilities that come your way, you just feel like they're going to break you. You can't take on new responsibilities yet. In a job like I had, if they tell you you need to do something, you do it. It's part of your job.
Mm.
And but my biggest struggle was that this was the job that God had opened up for me. This was my calling. How could I have gotten burned out with something that I loved so much? Yet every day I would cry every day. Many times I'd be in the classroom and I'd have to excuse myself and run to my room and just breathe and cry. Getting myself motivated to go after Sunday was over. The depression that I felt. And I didn't understand it because I loved the kids. I loved the music. I loved the ministry that I was able to do with my small choir in the springtime where we'd go to the different churches. I loved the writing that involved it, tapped into so much. Yet now I was faced with barely being able to do what I loved anymore. And so because of that, I actually lived in burnout for about 3 years
Mm.
before I had kind of a wake up call. I had a couple wake up calls, but this one particular one was I'd gone to the hospital after spending an evening with friends. We were playing games and whatever, and I'd gone to the hospital because I noticed that my legs were swollen. And so while I was in there, they had said, which struck a little bit of fear in me, but I think they found out later it wasn't this, but that it was a TIA, which is, I looked up a TIA, stands for transient ischemic attack, which is sometimes called a mini stroke.
Wow.
Um, but like I said, I'm not so sure it was God just giving me a wake up call and saying, enough, you've got to do something here. And so for the first time in my life, I grabbed hold. I mean, I remember, I remember thinking, wow, instead of thinking about all of is this a TIA and all of that, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, maybe I'll just have a break. All I want to do is just have a break. And so when the doctor said, you maybe need to take a little break and rest, rest from all the stress, boy,
Mm.
I jumped on that. And I told my administration, I need, this was close to Christmas. This was about 6 weeks from Christmas, which our program, our really big Christmas program, is usually about 3 to 4 weeks before Christmas. And so the first time in my life, I let someone down and didn't follow through with my commitments. I just couldn't do it. And so that was a really big wake up call for me that that I needed to do something. And so with a lot of tears and everything else, I told the kids I was going to have to leave. And I did. I left after teaching 8 years. And and then it started me on the journey of post burnout. And truly, that was as hard, if not more hard,
Mm.
correcting everything that burnout had caused physically, emotionally, and spiritually, even. That was harder than the 3 years that I worked in a burnout state. And that was hard work. So, God is good, and He did lead me through that journey, and has had me reflect, because one of the post burnout things that you have to deal with is you are more susceptible to burnout in the future. So he's had to really work with me on looking and seeing where did I go wrong and what happened, and then finding a new purpose was a huge part of that journey as well. Because once I found myself out of the stress of that job, you think burnout is going to go away. Well,
Mm-mm.
burnout doesn't go away. It leaves you with a lot of things to correct. But I don't think it ever really lets you go. I know there's times that there was times after that when I had kind of nursed some of my wounds and beginning to get some of my health back, um, that my church called and asked if I would just do, I don't know, something so simple. And it was just there would have been no time, money, or even energy involved in it, hardly. I don't even remember what it is at this point, but I remember hanging up and instantly the panic came back into my life.
Ooh.
And it's just that you get to that point where you can't take anything feels like a heavy demand on you. Anything that, and so that was several years of that. And I still experience some of that a little bit even today. But I had to get the balance established back in my life, and it was a journey. So today when I work with women, I work with them in all stages, whether it's preventative, they know that they're maybe on the track towards going there, or I will work with them if they're in the middle of it. And but the greatest journey we take together is the recovery from it. And so
Now,
anyways, that's sort of a kind of
that's
a
what
general
what's
show,
interesting
nutshell.
is what's interesting, Terry, is that you mentioned the recovery was harder. Can you share why and how? What was that like? Why was it harder? I find that very intriguing.
Well, stress is such a huge part of both burnout and what you're going through when you're going through the burnout. You're just overwhelmed with everything. You're stressed. But after burnout, and I mean, yes, after I quit and I relieved the catalyst that was keeping that burnout ever present and going after that, and I relieved that stress of the work and all of that, I had a much different stress that hit me. And it was the stress of not doing anything, of having purpose in my life anymore. I didn't feel relevant to anybody anymore. I was lost and I was broken. I didn't have my health. I had to go through quite a bit just to get my health back. I was an emotional mess. Whereas when I was in the burnout and still working, I had to push myself through that, and I couldn't work on my emotional state of being. And so I just had to get through every day and just keep going. And but yet, when I was on the other side and facing recovery, there were all of these things that I call it clutter. You how just like you have to clear the clutter in someone's life, um, um, in your actual surroundings, how messy your house can get or something.
Mhm.
My life had gotten messy inside, and there was a lot of clutter. There was a lot of emotional stuff that I had to deal with, and so that was really when I say it was harder work. That was harder work for me as going through that because I didn't know if I would ever have a purpose again. I didn't know if I was going to recover. I fell into a different type of depression of just lost my way in so many areas because remember that was my calling. That was something that I loved and I thought
Mhm.
God had for me. And so yeah, that was a journey. And for me, after that, God didn't bring me through a route of going back and getting my master's in music and worship, which was so healing to me. But I had no clue if God would use that. I was already in my 50s, right? So who's going to want a, 50 some odd aged worship leader, correct? Or worship pastor? But he opened that up for me in those years after burnout. He did open that up for me. But because of circumstances I absolutely can't go into time-wise, that lasted about 6 months. And then God told me it's enough. And I don't know if he was protecting me because there were some issues with the church, if he was protecting me from another bout with burnout or what happened. But that shot me down even lower than I had been when I lost my job, when I quit my job at the academy. And that was probably even harder to come back from. So, and that's all tied in with the feeling of God's done with me. I've lost my purpose, and it all, of course, began with that burnout and having to redefine what he wanted now and what my life was going to look like. Yeah, it was a
Speaking to the how he helped to rebuild that purpose, that's another thing you said that I wrote down here. How did he help you rebuild back into that purpose and something that was for you, and just to be able to settle back into what I'm gonna say, what it seems like he was transitioning you into. He
mhm.
transitioned you out, and then through time transitioned you back into a new purpose. Why don't you speak into that?
Ah, yeah. Well, uh, God gave me kind of a visual of a reset button. And holding that reset button every morning and going to him and hitting that reset button of his grace and mercy
Mm,
and purpose for my life.
mm,
Where I would lose sight of that, I just go in and hit that button of God's mercy and grace, and he is the one that I credit all, absolutely all of my recovery to. And there's a text that I was actually going to share with you guys if you don't mind. It
sure.
was a text that the other day I was thinking about, okay, what can, I knew we were going to do this interview, and I was like, Lord, help kind of put this into a context for me, how my story can help others, and where I can see my story. And he gave me this text that literally I've had this text and claimed it and used it for years during these burnout years. Um, but he gave it to me, and he showed me that every part of that text was my journey, that I can be found in throughout this text, and it is my journey. And it's found in Psalms 41 to 3, and I'm going to use the NIV version. This was actually David's words, but it is my story too. It says, I waited patiently for the Lord to help me,
Mm,
and he turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the pit of despair, out of the mud and the mire. He set my feet on solid ground, and he steadied me as I walked along. He has given me a new song to sing, a hymn of praise to our God. Many will see what he has done and be amazed. They will put their trust in the Lord. Now, when I break this down, when I waited patiently, that part of the text, it wasn't me. I didn't really wait real patiently, but I definitely waited on the Lord persistently because I knew that he turned to me every day and listened to me and heard my cry. And I knew he was always there. But I want to tell you, waiting on the Lord is not easy. But it was part of my journey, and I think it's part of anybody's journey that has to go through anything and go through burnout. So I did. I cried out often to God and hit that reset button. The next part of the text says he lifted me out of the pit of despair, right? Which for me was burnout. It's different for everybody. Everybody's pit is different. But a pit of despair is a pit of despair, no matter what
mhm.
causes it.
Right.
And mine happened to be burnout. And the job that I loved so much was the catalyst of that despair. And then it says he pulls me out of the mud and the mire. That part speaks to the part that I was stuck. I was, have you ever had a car stuck in the mud and you try to get it out, and when you put that gas on, all that happens is the wheels just turn. They just turn. It keeps digging you deeper and deeper. And that is exactly what I was doing when I was in burnout. I was just spinning my wheels. I didn't know the way out. I was stuck. I didn't know how to break the cycle that I was in. And so he pulled me out of that. And then he set my feet on solid ground and steadied me as I walked along.
Mm,
I think of these visuals, and this is exactly what he did for me, is think of the visual of solid ground. Have you ever been on a suspension bridge where you're walking across and you can hardly, unless you hold on, you can hardly get across it without
yep.
falling or catching yourself, right? That is the complete opposite of a solid ground, but that suspension bridge is what you're on when you were in burnout or in your pit. And so he takes you out of that and he steadies you on solid ground. And the most beautiful picture I can get of being steadied is when you see maybe an adult child holding that older mom or dad, holding their arm and steadying them so they don't fall as they walk to their destination. And that's what God did for me. And that's what, he does for us. Um, and then it's just this next part is my story now. He gave me a new song to sing, I wasn't able to sing that song until I was on the other side of burnout and had come through the recovery journey with God. And then after that came my new purpose and my new meaning to life. And then this is seen in the last part of the text, which says, many will see what he has done and be amazed, and they will put their trust in the Lord. And that was my after burnout journey with God. That is how I got to where I am, was because um, I went through that, experienced that like David did. And
Now, getting a
yeah.
little bit more specific with that, I think
Mhm.
the question I have, at one point, did you decide to start helping others come through their journey with burnout? Just a little bit more specific on that. At what point did this happen?
Oh, I've I've always known or believed that experiences we have aren't just experiences for no reason, that they are experiences that God trusts us to use to help others with. And so um, I I didn't know where God was bringing me through this, and the times that I just begged God to be able to go back into the ministry and just begged him to give me a second chance there somehow in a church that would respond and didn't have so many problems, with worship. And just because it's so much a part of my life, is leading worship. And I would just beg him. But God has not opened up those doors again for me to be into a church setting, but he has opened up the doors to be able to speak to other daughters of his
Mm.
and speak into their life from my own experience. So that is why when I did get healthy and on my way for looking new purpose, God brought me across this school that would teach me how to be a coach, and then brought me across some other people's and other coaches' paths that helped me direct that in the Christian um, way, because the world, sometimes the world can have a little bit different take on some of those, but I wanted to bring a Christian approach to coaching into people's lives. So yeah, that's where I came from.
That is amazing. Now, Here's another interesting question that I have for you. What do you think the biggest contributors to burnout in today's world? What are the biggest contributors in
Oh,
today's?
yeah. You know, I think that one of the biggest contributors is that all right, I'm going to say I want to talk to all you perfectionists out
Go,
there.
go for it.
Okay,
Here we
I
go.
truly
Let's go, people. She's about to
yes,
unleash. Let's go.
let's go. I truly believe that in my case, I didn't realize how much of a perfectionist I was until I got into the business of creating programs and stuff like that for the kids and teaching them, all of this stuff. All of a sudden, it's like the heaviness of doing it right, which is really, I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to tell perfectionists out there something, okay? We tend to be criticized or accused of being control freaks, but
Mm,
that's not what we are. And I learned this from Mark Gungor, I think his name was, which is he's several years ago. But what we are with our personality, a perfectionist just has to do everything right. And
mm.
I believe that's what got, and a lot of times your way is the right way, right? We got to get over that too. But anyways, but I believe that that was what initially set me up was that I wasn't willing to not do it perfect, or at least with all my being and everything I was. And so I began to make compromises in my life on my priorities. All of a sudden, my health and taking care of myself wasn't my top priority. Doing my job well was. All of a sudden, you're finding yourself being able to spend less time with your family because well, I've got to do this, or I'm going on this trip with the kids, or I'm doing this, or I have to stay late and do this grading, or I have to, and all of a sudden that kind of stuff begins to lose its place in your priorities. Um, and slowly over time, then you begin to lose a life balance
Mm.
where those things that were most important that you're juggling, right?
Right.
Should be you think of it like this. It was a coach sometime, I don't know his name, that talked to me or was giving me an illustration of priorities and how if you take those priorities, everything that you're juggling in life, and you put those mentally and realize they sit in a glass ball. And then there's other things that you bring into your life, what being a sponsor, right?
Right.
that that is a rubber ball. And if you dropped it, what does it do? It can bounce back and you can grab it again when you're ready. But the glass ball that should hold your most valued priorities, if we let that fall, if we go for the rubber balls instead of, and drop the glass ball, it can land on some pretty hard surfaces and it can break. And so that's what I did with my health. I didn't consider it one of those glass balls that if I dropped it, or just didn't pay much attention to it, it would break, but it did. And the same with my emotional health, just all kinds of things. So, if we kind of guard those priorities in our life and we put them into perspective, that's really important. So that's another thing that can kind of set the stage is if you begin to see yourself losing that balance of those things that have always been top in your life,
Mm.
and all of a sudden now you see them dropping a little bit lower. And so yeah, that's probably
Now,
what.
interesting. How does burnout actually differ from just feeling tired or stressed? Because I mean, I can picture somebody that's stressful and anxious about stuff and maybe possibly just misdiagnosing themselves with burnout. So how do you tell the difference between just being really tired and stressed and kind of a little bit of overworked, but maybe not quite there at the burnout stage? How do you tell the
Right.
difference? How does burnout differ from just tired or being stressed?
Well, keep in mind that burnout is going to be a chronic situation. I mean, stress that is chronic is going to be leading you into burnout. So you can have those stressful moments and yet if, after a week or two of time that's relieved, you're probably not going to, if you've got all your priorities straight and you've got that good life balance, you're probably not going to experience burnout. But if you have allowed these things to go in your life to that point, it's probably from a chronic situation of stress. So when you see yourself chronically stressed, which means it doesn't go away and it's every day, and you're beginning to get to the point where I can't even see myself going to work or do this anymore. You are really in a danger zone. You could already be in burnout. But here's the thing, and burnout will create a lot of physical symptoms that can be if you I don't have all of those here with me. But you can look up, burnout symptoms, and there's a lot of them, and a lot of them are very physical. And like when I started waking up with anxiety, that kind of thing, and I'd never done that before, or I was starting to have problems sleeping and I never had that. But this is, if this isn't just because of a very limited time of stress, but this is happening over and over and over again, you would definitely need to look at whether burnout is a factor. And the other thing is I don't know if at the beginning I told you that, but I didn't even know burnout was a real thing. But literally, you can look up the definitions of burnout. And one of them is burnout has actually been recognized and given its own code number in the medical field as a very physical, thing. It's real. It's I don't want to say it's not a disease, of course,
Right.
but it is a very real thing that once people have hit it, it's a little late. You can't,
Actually, actually,
you
I
know.
think it is a disease. It's dis-ease.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
So, I mean,
That's
I think
true.
so. And I did kind of look up some of these symptoms. So, you've got physical symptoms are chronic fatigue, frequent
Mhm.
illness, headaches and or muscle pain, sleep disturbances, appetite changes. Emotional symptoms include feeling detached or numb. Ooh, that's a good one.
Yep.
Irritability or anger, anxious or anxiety and or depression, decreased motivation. That's another key one, I think.
Yes, it is.
Increased cynicism. Ooh,
Yes.
increased
Yeah.
cynicism. Ooh,
Oh yeah.
mental and cognitive symptoms, difficulty concentrating, brain fog. Okay, yeah, we expect
Yeah.
those. Yeah,
Yeah.
and the list literally goes on, but those are some of the symptoms.
It absolutely, and they're very real once once you experience the burnout. It's you you have to recover just like you would any other illness from the burnout, and that involves a lot of emotional recovery too. So
Mm.
yeah, it affects every part of your life, and so it's a much better thing to avoid than to try to deal with. And the thing about burnout is once you hit it, there has to be some kind of change. something. And so I went to my administration and I knew I was in burnout once I had finally done the research and put a name to it. And they knew. And so they tried really hard. They took off one of my classes. There were things that I could have quit, like the drama and the orchestra and just some extracurriculars that I'd taken on myself. There were some things I could have stopped. Um, but that to me at that point were the only things bringing me joy. Was the actual teaching. It was all this other stuff that I couldn't handle. But the actual being with the kids, I still loved that. It was hard because of the burnout to motivate myself to go in there, but I didn't want to let go of that because I loved it so much. So I knew I had to make a change. Unfortunately for me, I had let it get so far into the burnout that wasn't enough. So
Mm.
3 years later, I did have to quit. But I believe if you change it, some of the circumstances, always try that first and see if doing something different can help. It could. I mean, it kept me going for another 3 years. I would have never made it 3 years if they hadn't even done that
Wow.
more. But I'm not sure that was a good thing. But yeah, it's really important to be able to make a change. In fact, 3 or 4 years after I had left, the principal called me back again and said, he thought maybe it was great I could come back, and I was intrigued. I had recovered enough, like maybe I could do this. But there was something in the pit of my stomach that I just knew if I had to go back and do the exact same thing that I was doing before, I knew I would not be able to do it because once you've experienced burnout in that area, unless you do something different or a little bit of a change to it that gives you enough of a break to recover and get all that back, you just can't do it. And sure enough, it would have been the exact same scenario. And I just said, I can't do it. I would love to. I'd love to get back into the music and work with the kids, but I can't. So, there is that because it is such a real thing and that, you have to deal with. But
Amazing, amazing. Now, in wrapping up, so you've got somebody that out there, maybe somebody in the audience is listening that is maybe on the brink of experiencing burnout. Maybe they are in burnout and they know it and they don't know how to get it. What are 3 to 5 things that you would tell someone like that who is like right on the edge? They're in that danger zone, as you talked about, or they're there. What are 3 to 5 things that you would give them that would help them?
um, I would tell them that start right now towards avoiding it if you're not there yet. Okay. You want to start right now, which means get yourself educated, research, find out what those symptoms are, give your situation the understanding it needs. Be honest with yourself because, a lot of people had the misconception that burnout can only happen to people that don't like their job but that's not true. I think it happens more to people who do love their job and want to put their whole being into it. So be honest with yourself and what kind of pit of despair are you in? What are you headed for? How do you get out? That kind of thing. Just be honest with your situation and try to look at it from outside yourself if you can a little bit, as though you were looking at, somebody else's life and see if you can put those puzzle pieces together. Also, you've got to get back to balance in your life. If you are feeling like you are getting close to burnout, you are losing a life balance as well. And that is going to be you reevaluate your priorities. You're going to have to take some sort of action, maybe a course correction that will be just enough for you to be able to catch your breath and, get started again. But I know that's a scary word. It's a scary word for anybody, especially, if they're in burnout because they don't have energy to even stay on course, much less change, It's like they can't see. I just couldn't hardly see it myself, how to do that. And then I would not hesitate to seek help. If I am convinced today that my journey would have been so much quicker if I had sought help back then when I suspected that
Mm.
I was being overwhelmed by everything and was going to bring myself into burnout. It's a large task to defeat this beast, and you don't have to do it alone. I think about um, let's say you have a garage, right? And you're able to put people's your cars in there. Well, you keep moving junk in there, right? And pretty soon what happens? You can't park your cars in there anymore.
Most
Then
people's garages end up that way too. It's like you can't park the
yes,
car in there anymore.
that's right. And then you bring more stuff, and before you know it, you can't even walk through it to get to the other side to get what you need, right? And so when you walk into that garage, what do you feel? You feel like completely defeated, like there's no way I can do this. I don't have the energy to do this. I cannot clean out this garage on my own. I don't even know how to do it. But then God puts somebody in your life that says, I've been there before. I've had a garage just like that, and I know how to clean it out. I know the proper storage compartments to get to put in your garage so that you can park those cars in there. I know what you need to get rid of. I know what you need to keep. And you have that person that's there and saying, you don't have to do this alone. All of a sudden, that defeat turns into hope that you can do this. And so that's what I see seeking help does for a person who is in this state. That it just gives them somebody that knows they've been there. They know what you're going through, and they're able to help you clean it out and get it, to where it's functioning as it should again. So that would be it. And there is one more thing that I will give because what I gave you three. Let me give you a fourth one. Okay. I want you to go and reread Psalms 40, that text, and I want you to see where you are in that picture. Okay. Maybe you're just in the pit wondering if God's hearing you. Then I'm going to challenge you to rewrite Psalms 40, 1 to 3. Okay. And I use the NIV. You can, no, NL, New Living Translation, NLT. Sorry. I use that version, but you can do whatever version you want. I want you to rewrite Psalms 40 as a promise for your own life and then read it every day. And this is how it will sound. Wait patiently for the Lord to help you, and he will turn to you and hear your cry.
Mm.
He will lift you out of the pit of despair, out of the mud and the mire. He will set your feet on solid ground and steady you as you walk along. He will give you a new song to sing, a hymn of praise to your God. Many will see what he has done and be amazed, and they will put their trust in the Lord. So that's the best advice I can give you in this short period of time that might help get you a little bit going on your journey.
Now, here's the things, you guys. Teri has given you a lot of gold on this call, a lot of that's a part of her story and everything else. And so here's the thing, you guys. If you are in that spot and you're just like, "Ah, I've been there. I've been there. I'm feeling like that now. I'm feeling like that now." If you're identifying that, then I encourage you reach out to Teri. Teri is an expert in this field. She's brought herself out of God has rescued her. She's got a new purpose. God has grown in her this purpose to now help others out and through the stages of burnout. So, and I think that that garage illustration was just so epic epically perfect is what I want to say. And here's why, because I identify with that. See, my thing is I don't have a garage. I have a storage shed. Quite a few years back in 2015, my mom and I both sold our houses. I sold mine first, and I stuck all my furniture in this storage shed. She's then shortly after mine sold, her house then got a bite, and we stuck all her stuff in the storage shed. The whole idea was in the next 2 or 3 years, we were going to get a different house, and I'm my mom's caretaker, so obviously we were going to get one together. Um, yeah, it's 2025. I still have that storage shed and it continues to go up 20 to $40 every year for that rent. And so I am now paying over $500 a month. Here's my point. Going to that storage shed, trying to empty it out has become quite overwhelming and quite burdensome. So that's why, just to kind of give you a little picture there, an example, that's why I identified with that garage example. I'm like, okay, mine's not a garage. I got a storage shed. It's actually real. Um, Now, I'm not going through a bunch of burnout, but that storage shed, that is like overwhelming. We still can't even figure out how we're gonna even gonna touch it, of what that even looks like. But that's a whole nother story. I just share that to say that I identify with that because that's how I feel when I go up there and we try to take things out and throw them out or whatever. Because I'm like, oh my gosh, we're never gonna be rid of this thing. Anyhow, all of that to say, Teri, you gave so much gold to people today and so many gems and treasures and everything. It's just so awesome. So, you guys reach out to Teri. She's got two links that are going to be in the description below. One is going to be a link to her calendar to schedule an appointment with her. And the second one is a link to her website. So you can connect with her there as well. So book a discovery call with her, you guys. If you're experiencing anything close to burnout, if you feel like you're close to it, you probably are, or you might actually be in burnout. So it's time to put a stop to it. It's time to re-empower yourself and to repurpose yourself and to begin that healing process. Because it is a web. It does begin to affect your family, your friendships, your emotions, your health, your relationship with God. It affects everything. Just picture this big old giant web just going out and it touches all parts of your life and it affects all parts of your life. So you don't want to hang on to that too much longer. All right. So that's what I encourage you guys to do. Reach out to Teri. And with that, as we conclude this interview, I've got a few announcements here really quickly. So, first of all, if you haven't caught on, maybe this is the first time you've seen me. Maybe this is the first video you've seen on this particular channel, and you don't know who I am. Well, my name is Ken Kleinberg, and I've lost 62.5 pounds, and I've kept it off for going on actually 7 years now and having that be sustainable and have nothing nothing to do with any kind of diets it at in any way. All right. So right now I'm giving away my 3 secrets to help you break free from those sugar addictions, hunger issues, snacking issues, emotional eating. That's a big one nowadays. And lose that last 20 or 30 pounds, all of it, all in just 3 one-on-one sessions with me. You will be equipped with an empowered mindset shift. Number 2, you will be equipped to see past the industry lies and avoid the common pitfalls of this industry. Number 3, and lastly, you are going to be equipped to see past the marketing deceptions of this industry. They put it all over their packaging. You're out there really making the heartfelt choices with your food, thinking that you're buying something that is healthy for you, your family, your kids, and chances are you're buying into marketing deception. I empower you to see past all of that and come out on the other end standing on a ground in which you'll never look at food the same way ever again, in a good and very freeing way. And you won't fall into the industry pitfalls anymore. 3 one-on-one sessions with me, and that is my mini educational boot camp that I have running right now. I have given an insider look to two different influential coaches. One of them said my boot camp is worth $1,000. The other one said that she would expect to pay about $1,500 for that boot camp. Check it out, you guys. Right now, it is going for only $97. You got nothing to lose but those extra pounds, and you got everything to gain in the right way and a very freeing way. So the link to join my boot camp is below, also in the description. So you'll scroll past Terry's stuff. Terry's stuff will be at the top. You'll scroll past, and down at the bottom, you will see that link. So with that, you guys, Terry, do you have any last minute thoughts before we close out today?
Oh, just a real quick thing as you're talking. I did give that link that I gave that goes to the scheduling. That is that my $47 one-off coaching session. But for you, Ken, and your audience, if they just wanted that discovery call and which is not a full session. If they would want to do that and just talk with me for free, I'm happy to do that. That would be a different link. It's meetwithteri.com. Teri. Meet
Awesome.
with
And so do me a favor, send me that link, and I'll also put that in the description below
Okay.
for sure.
Okay.
Yes. So
All
you'll
right.
actually have
And
three links down there.
there you go. And also, Ken's program is amazing. You guys need to tap into that. I have been able to do that, and he's amazing. So, yeah.
Thank
All
you.
right,
Thank
Ken,
you for
thank
that,
you
Terry.
so much for this opportunity.
You're welcome. All right, you guys have a great rest of your day or evening, depending on where you are in the world and what time of day you're listening. And I will talk to you on the next expert interview. Thanks again, Terry, for being on the show.